Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. This morning, I am Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning, I'm Neota Igbe.
Good morning from Lagos. I am Bukola Koka.
It's 13th of September. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde. Well, let's begin this morning by talk about that famous quote, health is wealth. I'm wondering, Auntie Neota, why haven't you been giving us quotes lately? But, maybe you want to save it for some other time. There's this news that is making the rounds about some global partners, global health partners that have committed to spending $2 billion in Nigeria to promote health. It's a plan by these partners for grant financing for the health of Nigerians for the next 3 years. Of course, it was these global partners, by the way, are the Global Fund, U.S. President's Malaria Initiative, and the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. And this was disclosed by the Minister of Health and Coordinating Minister of Health and Social Welfare after they had a meeting with the Vice President. For him, it symbolizes the confidence and alignment that global partners have around the vision of our President and his desire to transform Nigeria's health system to improve health and well-being for Nigerians. But what I find interesting about these guys is that I think it is following that same meeting that the Vice President's office released a statement where it said that the federal government is preferring, is that the right word? I don't know. Anyway, the government is intending to prioritize domestic health funding for better outcomes for Nigeria. How all of this is going to work together, I guess we're going to have to wait to see. Remember, guys, we had this meeting, this conversation with the same Minister of Health not too long ago, where we were talking about prioritizing healthcare delivery, particularly at the primary health care level, as opposed to people rushing for basic health needs, rushing to secondary and tertiary health institutions like general hospitals and teaching hospitals and the rest of that, just to solve some of these basic things. For me, guys, the one thing remains: how do we communicate to people that our systems are working in a way that they will not only believe it, but they will trust that these things are going to work for them no matter where they find themselves? So the word is out, $2 billion in health financing coming to Nigeria, the federal government preferring domestic health financing. But how do we put these things together, communicate to Nigerians, partner right with the federal and state governments in a way that everyone knows what to do? That, for me, is very, very important.
Well, maybe we should first of all start from, which is not the most important really, but we should start from the terms of this commitment. Yes, indeed, it's a grant, but what are the long-term implications of this grant? What are the details? Which may come up, somewhere in the near future. But let's also look at some of the things that the Minister of Health said, at that meeting following the commitment of the global health partners, which include USAID, by the way, and some other international organizations. The three visitors have now committed $2 billion in financing. But the Minister of Health also said...
$2 billion.
$2 billion. Thank you, Ayo. The meeting also discussed a program to retain 120,000 frontline health workers in Nigeria from all the states over the next 12 to 18 months to boost primary healthcare system.
Now, that's music.
Yeah, and that's music to our ears. And of course, I also said that there's going to be a partnership, according to the Minister of Health, with the state governments and the local governments. So we don't know what the terms or the sharing formula, so to speak, will be between the federal and the state governments and the local governments over this $2 billion financing. But perhaps we should now begin to look at prioritizing in the expenditure of these grants human capital development rather than physical infrastructure. Of course, there is also that all-important need to develop what's on ground, particularly the primary health care systems, which is closest to the people. We require maternal health care. We need to take care of that. Reduce infant and maternal mortality, all of these common illnesses, malaria, and all of that. But perhaps this is also the point where we should look at the demands of the medical association, the resident doctors, who have always been talking about recruiting more doctors to fill the gap, their hazard allowances, their remuneration, the CONMES, the agreements that was reached. This is the time to look at the demands of the medical practitioners such that we can stem the brain drain. For me, what's important is human capital development in the expenditure of these funds. Chamberlain.
I'll just jump in before you go in. It's just interesting that the Global Fund is doing what it's done, or has done what it's done, because it didn't just start now. I think that donation was first done in 2022, March or thereabouts, if I remember correctly. But I just want to say this. Regardless of what you think, someone might bring you a broom to clean your house from the outside. That's not the important thing. It is what you do inside your house that matters most. So if the funds are given, or yes, a grant's been given, and many other grants have come forth like that for different things. Well, this one in particular is, the latest one is 1 billion or thereabouts to fight TB and malaria. I think that was around the month of June. If these grants are given like that, and they are not utilized effectively, then there's a problem. We had a conversation with the Minister of Health, and he talked about I think he gave a 4-point agenda, if I remember correctly, what he's going to do and how he's going to, so he and his team, how they're going to ensure that the health system in Nigeria is up a notch. It would take a lot of work, and not just from the Minister of Health or the Minister of State for Health or the health practitioners. It would take a lot of work from all Nigerians for us to utilize whatever is brought from the outside inside to be able to clean up our house and make it better. Besides that, it's also looking what do we have in-house? What is it that we have here that we can use to better our situation? We're called the giant of Africa. And that means we have something to offer to the world. We're exporting our medical personnel, and what are we bringing in? Okay, fantastic, we have that to offer to the world. We have the human resources to offer to the world. But we can also use our human resources in-house to make our space a lot better and attract more come in. So I think it's about using what we have in-house, and whatever is brought in, utilizing it effectively and accountably so that we are set out from the others.
Well, yeah, I'll just hold on a little bit on that one, because I like to just see timelines and deliverables. For instance, I know the minister did highlight some activity in terms of the need for us to ensure we reduce our dependence on importation of over 70% of the drugs we need in the country, manufacturing some of those here, even basic components of some of those drugs, we'll get them available in this country, get our vaccination plans up and running in the country. Those kind of timelines are the things that it will help a great deal if we have those. And then, of course, research. I don't know how we can measure all of those, because, former president of Nigerian Academy of Science, Professor Tomari, did tell us once upon a time that most of the research that usually done is funded by international agencies and donors.
It's kind of grant.
We don't seem to pay a lot of attention to all of those. So kind of tells us where our priorities are. So we need to, much as these things come through, but we also need to ensure that, because look, it's not a freebie.
He said, the minister said something about working with the other ministers, for instance. He talked about research, that's education. He talked about manufacturing, that's industry, commerce, and trade, industry, commerce. And so different ministries will have to come together and say, okay, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to achieve. If we get this, that's why I said the broom is brought in, it is how you use that broom to clean your house that makes it work. So the grants come in. What are we doing? Are we manufacturing the drugs we need, the vaccines we need for whatever treatment things we want to treat? What research do we have in the different universities across the country, both private and public? Simply, you'll be amazed what they do in the laboratories in our different universities. Amazing discoveries they have there. Who's looking at that?
I think regulation too is going to be, it's incredibly important that we ensure, because at the end of the day, if they do all of that and then it's adulterated or the market is infiltrated with very poor, substandard materials, it damages the entire thing, entire investments and confidence that people are trying to build in that health sector. So, it's huge. Primary, secondary, tertiary. The minister talked about a fourth phase. And I thought, whoa, how are we doing with these first three phases in the first instance? Because sometimes the federal, the state, their duties overlap.
Local government.
They all overlap to the extent that, and sometimes when those kind of things overlap and it's not properly spelled out, you find some people think, well, no, you can do it. Well, you can also do it. And then therefore drag it and nobody ends up doing it. So, yes, it's good to see these donors come through, but we need to also ensure that we put our own houses in order. I think they say, if I remember properly, by 2024, vaccine production plant will kick off in this country. With our partnership with Indonesia, I think me and Baker also have something to do with it. So
let's hope that
it will be interesting.
Let's hope that another set of manufacturers will not be packing their stuff and leaving the country for one reason or the other. But
hope is not a strategy, as we always say here, but we've seen governments say they're trying to see what they can do to create a very good working environment to ensure that those kind of scenarios become history. But it's a job of work. It's a huge ask and task. But they say, that's why we elected them in the first place. So fold their sleeves and get right to it. All right, well, we get right to the dailies here ourselves. Then we'll start off with the Guardian newspaper here today. It's talking about something that's been in the news for a while. Obaze panel hunts, quote, conspirators in alleged 7 trillion naira frauds linked to Emefiele. Is that pluralized fraud? Okay. It jarred me a little bit, but that's the story here. For the conspirators here, we'll see. You will see how that goes on. So that's the key here. And then, look at this. Petrol, diesel cost may soar as oil prices rise amid tighter supply. Who will deliver us from this vagaries of this oil price, whipping us left, right, and center? Oh dear. Well, that you see here. And then 2 years after, cargo movement begins on Apapa Ibadan, $1.5 billion rail line. So, at least this may be some sort of boost to cargo movement, which is something, and probably, a good step. So now we need to look at those other hubs, regions, where cargo movement is massive. So when you get this there, of course you reduce pressure on our roads. Of course the roads will be somewhat safer. Of course that it will boost business and give you massive returns. Of course we all know it will stimulate to a very large extent the economy. So it will be indeed money is well spent. So far, interesting. Lagos, pardon, cargo rail. Way to go, really. That's the Guardian.
Okay, Leadership newspaper is what I have here, and they are looking at the state of the economy as schools resume. As schools resume, parents, guardians groan over fee increase with rising inflation. That's what the Leadership is leading with. Instead, get more of that on page 4, but see the writers. Fears heighten over possible rise in dropouts out of school children. And you do know that some states in the country have started to do free education, as far as basic education, primary and secondary school, that you like to go ahead. With strict warnings states like Kaduna and Taraba states, and some other states are also talking about free education, but whether it's going to be complete.
I'd like to know their plan about what are they doing with teachers.
Exactly. What are they doing with
Not
teachers?
just blanket free education.
So
the quality of education is also important because sometimes when things are free, people tend to think, oh no, it's of no consequence of quality.
So for that kind of a thing, some people will say there has to be proper testing of to know how much of their education that the students are getting, seeing that it is free. I mean, yesterday we saw a report from Taraba State where a father of 7 children took his children to school and said, none of my children have school, and thank God that this is coming. So let's see, maybe for that kind of a person, it might be worth his while.
And besides that, the Ministry of Education and the minister, led by the minister, they need to begin to talk to Nigerians about, now that, of course, we know it's not getting cheaper, education globally, here inclusive, we need to, because I can't remember, I think it's about 40%. I was trying to study some research that says some of the courses we do now, in about 10 years, 15 years, it will be obsolete. And the courses we do in this country, the curriculum, what kind of impact and value does it provide here? So retooling our curriculum to ensure that it meets our society and economic needs will be very important because, of course, we know the world has since changed ever since this curriculum is here. So we'll wait and see what happens.
So besides looking at the fees, we need to look at the curriculum as well, and the ministries that handle this need to talk to Nigerians. So see why we are increasing fees as a school operators. And the private school teachers lament low wages, delayed salaries.
Do we need any telling why they're increasing fees? Everybody knows why.
We should have seen that part. So we'll go to page 1 and get more of those details. I'm sure every parent out there already knows these details already. So, but check it out on page 4. And you see that picture of an accident on a Tedela Bridge and the effect of it. That was in Lagos yesterday.
What always goes, that Tedela Bridge?
Tedela Bridge. Someone didn't you
famous, notorious.
Whether something, is it spiritual or something?
Nah, just do all
just go check it out.
Road users, the traffic officers, we all need to do that.
But let's see, beside this picture, you have this other ones. NEDC to resettle 2.2 million IDPs is on page 64. 5,000 fed dead after Libya floods, page 7. And Wike probes $600 million garnish order against FCTA. That's on page 6. $600 million, FCTA. Above the nameplate, something that happened in the southern part of Nigeria, possibly happening in the north. And the reps are talking to the federal government, halt ceding of Adamawa lands to Cameroon now. Go to page 7 to read more on that. Remember what happened to Bakassi? That judgment as well. I think that's being looked at. The House of Representatives had a public hearing yesterday, and I think they're still continuing about that ceding of Nigeria's lands to countries around us. And this is on page 6, U.S. Congress begins impeachment inquiry against Biden, and that's it from Leadership newspaper.
And let's now turn our attention next to this Nigerian newspaper, which has quite a number of stories that will interest you on its front page today. Listen to this. NAF airstrikes hit remnants of terrorists in Borno. And there's just one rider here. We've curtailed Boko Haram activities in northeast, other regions. That's ascribed to COS, Chief of Army Staff, Lagbaja. But there's still more work to be done, particularly still in Nigeria's north. Let's look at other stories. Under that, PDP chieftain decries use of Market Square as classrooms in Bayelsa. So what's happening there? In other states, the classrooms we find are under the trees. So do we need more investment in the education sector? How much of, the budgetary funding are states committing to education?
That needs no telling. We definitely do. And I mean, now since we're still talking about, education, I'm glad, that Chamberlain and Nyota dealt with that issue of fees extension. And I'm particularly delighted with what Chamberlain mentioned about touching the curriculum, because we have to touch the curriculum.
Whether we like it or not.
We have to. A good number of careers in the next 10 years will be obsolete. Some of the curriculum that I don't know who I was speaking with in the medical education sector. And they said, look, in year one, the thing you studied in year one, by the time you graduate, is obsolete. What you studied in year one as the standard, by the time you graduate 3 years or 4 years down the line, what you learned in year one is obsolete. So what does that mean?
Indeed. You know, is it former governor of Lagos State, Babatunde Fashola, that once said there's a huge disconnect between the town and the gown in Nigeria. So what are we studying in our universities? Little wonder that the expatriates are taking off all of those, you know, engineering jobs and those tech jobs. We need more investment in that regard and a review, of course, of the curriculum.
What makes it even more interesting, young people want to study, come what may. The same curriculum because they don't have an option. Can we give them life skills? Things that, I mean, why don't we just prioritize technical schools, technical education, so that before they leave school, they are already employers?
By themselves.
Before they leave school, they're already, what's China doing? That's exactly what China is doing. Strengthening handwork, hands-on, you know, stuff that people can just get up and do. I mean, some of the things that come from China, they are ridiculous. But guess what? People are buying them. Foot mats, you know, cup holders, car phone holders, and all those things. Who's thinking about them? But they know you're going to need them anyway. There you go.
Those skills are very important. I mean, you know, in Nigeria, they say that those who lay tiles, you know, they're gotten more from a neighboring state and are more trusted than those skilled Nigerians who do the same thing. And that's really sad. You know, so we need to empower young people from the beginning. In fact, they are already aware, and they say that if you graduate, you're a graduate in Nigeria, and you don't have skills, you're in trouble. So young people are already rethinking their options before they exit schools. But just before we exit this Nigeria, there's another more important story I'd like to draw attention to. Tinubu directs agencies to identify causes of mishaps in Niger, Adamawa, as 41 die in 3 separate boat incidents. That's a really sad one. I mean, we haven't recovered from the Kwara boat mishap where people died in their hundreds. We're already having another boat mishap. What's happening in the water transport sector? Do we need more professionalism in that regard? Do people travel without advisories? What kind of boats are they using to travel? Do state governments need to begin to look at that sector to make investment, particularly if local governments are, you know, set in coastal areas where, as a matter of necessity, they must travel via water transport, particularly where the roads in those areas are not very good. We need to take a second look at what's happening there, as the president has rightly directed that agencies should identify causes of mishaps in those states and indeed in other states. Let's leave it there for this Nigeria.
Daily Independent is singing a song that several have also pointed at. Over time, is this like the federal government showing interest in the likes of Amotekun and Ebubago? But look at the lead story. Arase-backed integration of vigilantes into national security. Is that what it sounds like?
We need clarity on that one. What kind of integration? We have the forest security personnel. We have the NSCDC. Well, we have, you know, other security agencies as well, the neighborhood watch. So what kind of integration is the Police Service Commission boss talking about?
Well, the details are on the front page and continues on the
We hope that this conversation has started and it will continue.
Well, look at the bottom of the, below that picture on the front page, life insurance, Tinubu directs backlog payment to deceased soldiers' families. Lawaja says Army will upscale operations against criminals. You see that story about life insurance and payment of entitlement to the families of soldiers. It's very concerning. The fact that there has to be a backlog. I mean, we have a creed in the national anthem the labor of our heroes past
shall
never
be in vain.
Not just not, never be in vain. It is our creed. Why should this happen? Why does it have to take the announcement of the president for this to be a thing?
I don't even go there. The many sordid stories coming from that, aspect of Nigeria's army personnel, who are the forefront of tackling the insurgency and banditry in the Northeast. I don't even want to begin that conversation.
That's the Daily Independent this morning. Nyota.
Look at Vanguard. 2023 budget in danger as crude output crashes by 470,000 barrels per day. That's the big lead on the front page of Vanguard newspaper here today. But on to some other stories. Nigeria-bound goods can now be cleared in Cotonou, perhaps the federal government, and Benin Republic. So what does that mean? All those, what do you call it, firewall, something like that? Is it goodbye to all of those illegal smuggling? Because, they're talking about trying to ensure that they pay duties, appropriate duties are paid in Benin Republic, they work out. Anyway, they're trying to work out, define the details of these partnerships before one can go to town on the viability or otherwise of this, because, I guess they're trying to see how they can, don't lose revenue, because a lot of goods are diverted to Benin Republic. But I think they also need to answer, if this is the question, if this is the answer, question then is, why were they going there in the first place? Are we addressing that? So if Lagos Port is challenging, it's a Herculean task, so many things stay there for God knows how long, what are we doing about all the other ports in this country to ensure that rather than go to Benin Republic, use the other ones in this country instead of going over there too? So, would the country just allow you come collect duties? It's a very interesting one that you should check out, actually. So there's some piece of information about those Akwa Ibom ECOR members who were heading to Zamfara. Unfortunately, here, abductors of Akwa Ibom NYC members demand fresh 200 million naira after receipt of 13 million naira. Oh dear. That's Vanguard today.
Business Day is what I have here, and Chimlin, that matter of the port is a conversation that we need to have, because Nigeria loses quite a lot because all the ports are not being, and they're just lying there or less dormant. Okay. But anyway, Business Day is here talking Naira woes overshadow rare rise in dollar reserves. The woes of the Naira overshadow a rare rise in dollar reserves.
So in spite of our dollar reserves?
In spite of the rise in the reserves of our dollar reserves, the woes of the Naira overshadow that. But again, you remember there was this news out in the media space about how much Nigeria is owing certain banks based on what the CBN did. Conversations were, but this is what Business Day is leading with. Besides that, more cashless transactions deal POS business blow.
This is somebody blow?
Well, more cashless transactions deal POS business blow.
Oh, okay. Not the other kind of blow.
Not the other kind of blow, but this is a negative blow. But go to Business Day and read up more on that story. And that's it for Business Day.
And up next is the Daily Times. The Daily Times leads this morning with a focus on the judiciary, albeit in the South-South. Listen to this. Corruption with rocks Delta Election Petition Tribunal. It's a lie, says Tribunal Secretary. So what's happening there? Yeah, we hope to get details in the coming days of who's making the allegation and whether they're true or not. But the insert picture also tells quite a story. I believe there's a follow-up to the story on distressed buildings marked for demolition, and of course for which work has begun already somewhere on Lagos Island and Mushin areas of the state. Of course, you can catch that story, the highlights on News at 10 and on our other bulletins on YouTube. There are quite a number of other stories on the front page of Daily Times. Reps halt demarcation exercise to cede Adamawa territory to Cameroon. We hope that efforts are made to rein in on that, such that Nigeria doesn't lose yet another, like Bakassi from the early 2000s. NIS clears about 60,000 backlog of passports in 4 days. Ayo, can you beat that? In 4 days. So something is already happening at the Immigration Service, and perhaps the minister is walking the talk here.
Yeah, I think it just goes to show that we know what to do, and we just don't do it. I say this often. When we say government this, government that, please let's decrypt government.
Government? Who is government?
Who is government? It means that some of us, fellow Nigerians, know what to do and when to do and how to do. Mm-hmm. So why wait? Mm-hmm. So it goes back to that issue we often raise about our national values, national ethics, and personal sense of patriotism.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And if this has been done without the systems being automated, because I recall the minister speaking passionately about how we need to automate our systems, and these things don't have to be delayed by bureaucracy. If this has been achieved by manpower, physical manpower, without automation, it speaks a lot to what has been happening prior to this time.
A number of processes in our visa process has been automated. For instance, I think it was Mr. Felicia Phillips of Phillips Consulting as well. I read a post by him where he said that, look, I have scheduled an interview. I drove to the place on schedule. I came back home. They told me my passport will be ready on so day at so time, and it was ready. It wasn't something he did in Lagos. He was referred to somewhere in Ogun State. He went, did what he needed to do, came back and waited for his passport, and it was delivered. So I don't think it was something that was given due to favoritism or anything. So that needs to be. We have a measure of automation. Whether or not we allow the automation to work, it's another thing.
But and this is reminiscent of what the minister also said, that we need to eliminate the human element in the processing. That's that aspect of securing your passport, where you have to go through an immigration official, and inevitably corruption is involved in that aspect as well. So the minister has also emphasized on that. Let's leave it there for the Daily Times.
Nigerian News Direct leads with this one, and it's about diesel. How 7.5% VAT on diesel can disrupt supply of petrol nationwide. Hey, what's one got to do with the other? Well, you may want to check the details on the inside pages of the paper this morning. And right above the nameplate, Nigeria records 148 cases of crude oil theft in 8 days. Oh, so now we can measure per day. See? So things are really indeed happening. That's just one. Akpakpa Ibadan cargo train commences daily operations. Stories on page 7 of the Nigerian News Direct. That's the paper today.
Look at New Telegraph. Insecurity. Stay at home has ended in Southeast. Chief of Army Staff, that is ascribed to him here this morning, says Boko Haram activities, other terrorists have been curtailed. 200 churches shut down. 23 pastors killed by bandits in Kaduna in 4 years. Ascribed to Khan. Kidnappers intercept 2 Benue buses, abduct 10. Army floats Special Forces unit. And then H1 2023, Nigerians spent 733.92 billion naira on used vehicles import. Preference for accidented units increases. There's a huge market for Nigeria. It's huge. Influential people behind illegal mining in Nigeria, ascribed to a senator, says security challenge around it due to humongous proceeds therein. mining on an exclusive list, but FG not serious about it. What? So that's why it's becoming free for all for those influential people. So you see, that's what's going on here. And some deputy governors still at it now. Akeredolu sacks deputy governor's aides. So, easy one for a lot of them. Some tribunal judgments contravened established jurisprudence ascribed to Labour Party. So, that's it on New Telegraph this morning, which ends our look at some of the dailies here. We're back in a moment. Don't go away. Okay, welcome back. Well, yes, indeed, we've seen several, we all know how we are taking a hit. The economy, we know some policies have been put in place, set in motion by the government to see how they can mitigate or reduce, cushion the effects of the fuel subsidy removal. There's a panel that has been set up by the government to ensure they harmonize taxes and address that. For decades now, we've been talking about multiple taxation. Manufacturers, several people have lamented in terms of what needs to be done, how it is crippling businesses. So yes, Mr. Taiwo Yedile was with us a couple of days ago to just give us an update on what the committee is doing so far. So we're looking to the presidency now to see how they sign off on that first batch of what they've done. But some more agenda to be set for them here to bring to the attention of the president and the presidential committee. Mr. Derigo Williams joins us now. He's an economist and global strategist. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program here today. Okay, so.
Good morning to you, Chamberlain.
Okay,
and,
so.
Michael,
yeah.
And Algo and Bukola. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so you have been, you did watch that interview yourself, and about that committee, in terms of what you heard Mr. Oyedele say about the efforts so far, would you say, at least from your perspective, also being in some practice experience yourself, how much success from what you have heard him say should we expect?
You know, Mr. Taiwo Yedele is a very smart individual. And I think he has a good handle on the matter pertaining to the tax reform and then the fiscal policy review as well. He was on your show, as you said, on Monday, and he was talking about how to eliminate the artificial demand for dollars as part of the key strategy for strengthening the naira. You know, I wasn't sure if it stripped him, but I think that at some point he may be able to revisit that particular point, which is that the biggest culprit in this artificial demand arena, dollar demand arena, is the CBN and their policy that inbound remittances must be settled in dollars by the banks. And this has been going on for about 17 or so years. Close to 20 years. In other words, if somebody remitted dollars to you through the bank, through Western Union, the bank are obligated to pay you dollars. And then you will take the dollars to the black market and exchange it in order to get more naira. But here's the problem. Firstly, dollar is not a legal tender in Nigeria. Number two, if the country wants to adopt dollars as a legal tender, the National Assembly has to pass the relevant laws to that effect. It is practically beyond the purview of the CBN to create a different legal tender. Number three, it creates an artificial demand for the dollars, thereby causing the naira to lose value. Number four, it induces inflationary pressure on the domestic economy. Five, it takes out the diaspora remittances from the mainstream banking arena where its utility is most needed for the importation of goods and services. Number six, it promotes currency substitution or currency preference, a phenomenon that's usually associated with a wartime economy. Number seven, it has fueled an underground speculative economy with about $50 billion under mattresses, according to one financial expert. And the plethora of issues, are almost endless. So how do we get there? How do we get to this dollar settlement problem for remittances? We got there back in 2003. Sorry, 2003, I'm sorry. Western Union entered the Nigerian market back in 1995. By 2003, their market intelligence has revealed to them that some of the indigenous remittance companies were outcompeting them in the area of exchange rates. So in other words, these companies were paying more naira per dollar than the Western Union.
So Mr. Williams, pardon me if I could just butt in there. So does that mean that all of their competitors who saw how these policies came through and the impact it has on the naira did absolutely nothing about it? They didn't bring it to the attention of the authorities if they missed it?
Well, it was brought to the attention of the authorities. But the issue was that Soludo then was the governor of the central bank. And then those things were not, of interest to him, incidentally and unfortunately. So the problem continued. And it persists till this day.
So all of those challenges notwithstanding, and then the measures that the government plans to take, or perhaps if you address this, how much impact will that have? I mean, can we substitute that with ensuring that we focus on what some economists also say, look, some of the basic things we need to do here is to ensure we pay attention to manufacturing in this country, that if we do that, the huge demand for forex will be greatly reduced?
Well, as a growing economy, you'd always have demand for forex. The more you grow, the more demand you would have for forex. It's just inevitable, It's like the energy that you would need to produce a particular set of goods. If you increase your capacity, your energy consumption also goes up. So it's inevitable that as you grow the economy, your demand for forex would also increase. So the issue here is that it's not about the quantity of dollars that you need, right? But your ability to generate exports and to attract foreign capital into your arena. And as long as you're able to do that, once your macroeconomic variables are in place, then all those things are going to, work in your favor. So manufacturing, increasing manufacture or increasing exports, practically means that you're expanding your own productivity. And the more you expand your productivity, the more you would need, forex, because you're also generating dollars as well, or foreign exchange as well. So it's a matter of some dollars coming in and some dollars going out as well. But, net, if it is positive for you, then that's fine.
Okay, so at the moment, the policies that the government has put in place to ensure that all of these things are working, are you optimistic that we will get some results at the end of the day?
Well, the first thing you would do is to look at your macroeconomic variables. When you look at your exchange rate, right, even till now, after the president had made the pronouncement for the two markets to merge, the two parallel markets are still there. Sorry, the two markets are still there operating side by side. We have the official market and then they have the parallel market. All right. Now, what that means is that, firstly, the government is losing revenue. Okay, because you are selling the commodity below its market price. Number two, it's impeding capital inflow because the capital inflow must be recorded or must be transacted through the official window. And the official window today says that for every dollar, the equivalent in Naira is 788 Naira. Okay? Whereas in the real market, the parallel market, which I call the real market, is about 930, Naira to the dollar. So people are going to be a little bit more disinclined towards making that capital inflow under those circumstances. So it's important for the government to quickly and without any hesitation merge those two markets. I'll give you an example. If you have $100 on you, it's a rhetorical question. You have $100 on you and you want to convert it to Naira. Where do you go? Certainly not the banks. You go to the street trader to exchange it and get Naira because the street trader is giving you more Naira. All right, so the pricing mechanism must be able to reflect market such that you, with that $100, instead of going to the street trader, you walk straight into your bank and you're able to convert it to Naira at that prevailing market rate. So until those two things merge, and until there's a single window for transacting foreign exchange, this economy is going nowhere. And it's something they have to do without hesitation. Absolutely, without hesitation. It has to be done like yesterday. And the process is very simple.
If I may come in here,
yes.
What you're asking to be done, some might say it would require a lot of work to the extent of looking into the structure of our banking system.
Sorry, say that again, please.
Okay, what you're suggesting, or the solution you put out there about merging the two markets that are running side by side right now. Some would say if you're saying it should be done as quickly as possible, there are those who will argue that this might require looking into our banking system. I mean, to say that I have $100 and I want to change, I can just walk into the bank and I'll change and I'll walk out. Some might say it might require a lot of work, and doesn't look like they're ready to look into the banking system in Nigeria to make that difference. Do you agree?
Well, I think, part of that is psychological, right? Because we need to demystify the foreign currency, the dollars. We need to demystify it. Dollar is just like any other commodities, almost like going to the market to buy Gary. Once we have that particular dispensation, then it's going to be easy for us to deal with the dollars or with the foreign currency in that manner. Somebody walks into a bank, he puts up his dollars over the counter. The cashier looks at it. If it is genuine, you exchange it and give them the Naira equivalent at the prevailing market rate. That way, that dollar gets into the mainstream of the banking system so that it can be used to import capital goods and services. And that is the thing that this country needs, that is in dire need of. If you look at the cumulative effect over the last 40 years, of this rate disparity or market disparity, right? Some experts estimate that the opportunity cost to the economy is over $1 trillion in the past 40 years. Over $1 trillion. And that is not, nothing to be considered small. And, we've had the likes of Kalu Ijika Kalu back in 1986 with a superior economic mind who had adjudicated this matter and said, let the rates merge. And the rates actually converged. But somehow the rent seekers came in and then they tore the thing apart. And so we still have those two parallel markets. The markets must come together. It's a must. Without that, we are going nowhere economically. If you look at it now, even our per capita GDP, right? Some people are saying it's about $2,500. But in real terms, it is about $1,200. That's our per capita GDP. It's very low. Okay. Too low.
Mr. Williams, just real quick here. We were talking about the banking structure, but let's look at this other side about manufacturing. I know Chimlin asked that question earlier. Practically every manufacturer in the country has to import the components they need for their manufacturing, and these are priced in dollars. Even the resources we need in terms of crude and the gas that we need is also priced in dollars. So how would you expect that all of this will work to move the Nigerian economy to where it needs to be? You know what? You could answer that question when we come back from this break. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back, and then Mr. Williams, you please weigh in on that question.
All right, okay, thank you.
Welcome back. We're still talking to Mr. Derrigo Williams, an economist and global strategist, on the situation in Nigeria as regards the multiple currency markets we have there. Mr. Williams, if you can remember, the last question I asked you before we went on that break had to do with the conversation around merging the multiple markets platforms we have, so to speak. And I directed it at manufacturing, seeing that in the manufacturing sector in Nigeria, almost all the inputs that are needed by the manufacturer are imported and priced in the dollar. So how would that work when you say we should collapse all these things, and how would it affect manufacturing quickly?
Okay. Well, you have to look at the components of the process of manufacture, right? One of the major components of manufacture is energy. The energy cost here is very high. Reason being that the national grid itself is epileptic. Power doesn't come steadily. And so the manufacturers spend on the average between 30 cents to 60 cents per kilowatt hour generating their private electricity. And that is a major cost component of manufacture. When you look at other clients like Rwanda and Gambia, just our neighbors here, you will find out that they have power 24/7. And why is that? Nigeria doesn't have power 24/7. Why does Gambia, and why do Gambia and Rwanda have power 24/7? And the reason is very simple. It's a pricing mechanism. Here we've decided to adopt what we call the cost-reflective tariff structure, which was, borrowed hook, line, and sinker from Egypt, a land of multiple subsidies, the land of 1,000 subsidies, as they have, 1,000 pharaohs, and they brought it here without looking at the reality on the ground. In Nigeria, the private sector itself has accumulated over 9,000 megawatts of generating capacity, almost double or triple the national grid level. And they are spending, on the average, about $22 billion running, the power infrastructure for themselves. But here, the pricing structure for grid power, ranges from 2 cents per kilowatt hour to 9 cents. No serious investor would come in and do that for you. they're not here to make losses. So until we also get the pricing mechanism right for electricity, we are also going nowhere. Now, when you look at what we did with the gas, back in 1999 when the LNG started, that was the first gas development project the country ever embarked upon, all right? And what did they do? They decided to export the gas. We need energy. This country needs energy to develop. Why are we exporting our gas to foreigners to sustain other people's economies? Why not use it internally? And today we're also going to install the 7th or the 27th of the LNG. And that too is a problem. We are struggling with about 1 billion standard cubic feet of gas per day, when essentially we need about 5 billion standard cubic feet of gas per day, just to run, the energy sector, as well as the manufacture, industrial and commercial sectors, also for our homes as well. So these are the issues. So the country has to be serious about, energy, and the way you, deal with energy under today's environment is to make sure that the pricing mechanism is reflective of the market. If I'm paying, 30 cents per kilowatt hour, generating my own personal power, right? And if the grid power, NEPA, in other words, in quotes, offers it to me at 25 cents, I should be happy. Not 9 cents, not 2 cents. 2 cents doesn't make any sense. These guys are not here to give you, a service or provide you energy, under subsidy. Why is it that anytime the government is involved in the supply chain of a commodity, they do, they have a subsidy. Why do they do that? They introduce subsidy. Why do they do that? They do subsidy on petrol until they got us to the point where we couldn't sustain it. They do subsidy on gas. They do subsidy on electricity. Why? And the pricing mechanism in an economic system is a fundamental key issue. Until you get it right, you cannot go anywhere. The pricing mechanism must reflect market so that it will be able to allocate the scarce economic resources appropriately. But once you miss that point, right, your economy is going nowhere.
Well, Mr. Williams, while all of that is making a whole, lot of sense, let me quickly take you back to something that you talked about a little while ago, responding to Neota's question. And when you say that, for instance, we should focus some of our resources, like for instance, Nigeria LNG, should focus their resources, their energies into supplying the domestic market. And I think I remember also that the NLNG has said that they are going to prioritize quite some of their productions into the Nigerian market just to ensure that there is gas availability. But do you also factor in the fact that since 2008, according to NLNG themselves, they have contributed no less than 4% of Nigeria's annual GDP, and that they actually also make, I was trying to find out the exact figure, that they also contribute in terms of remittances to the federal coffers. Is that suggestion you are making with or without prejudice to those facts as well, the contribution of that company as a Nigerian company to Nigeria itself?
Sorry, Ayo, I could barely hear a word of what you were saying. Is there any way the guys in Abuja can relay the question to me? Because they are coming to me loud and clear.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
Okay, yeah, okay, let's try again then.
Okay, well, I was asking, when you talked about Nigeria LNG focusing their activities on supplying the domestic market, remember that by selling to these other nations, as you have said, they have contributed since 2008, according to their own facts and figures, no less than 4% to Nigeria's GDP, and that quite some money is also remitted into the coffers of the Nigerian government over the years. Is that suggestion you're making with or without prejudice to that forex coming into the country from that company?
Okay. You know, the forex generation by the LNG is really a myth. It's a myth. You know why? All right, so they export the gas, starve the domestic economy of gas, and then what happens? We spend another $18 billion importing generators and diesel and petrol to run our generators, plus the environmental impact as well. You know, so to me, that LNG was a miscalculation, an economic miscalculation. And I think anytime the white guy comes to us to say, do this and do that, right, we just follow through. That LNG is a miscalculation. And so when you say we're earning forex from it, you know, how much are we earning? Federal government occasionally gets about $2.5 billion in dividend every so often per annum, compared to the $18 billion we're spending to import generators. And in this country, we have about 70 million generators running. 70 million generators running. But if the LNG today would turn that spigot, that export spigot, back inwards, you know, for the domestic market, you see that power supply would improve. The economy would improve. In fact, what's holding up the economy from growing, right, is energy. Energy, period. And, you know, people used to brag that, oh, Nigeria was the biggest economy in Africa. That too is a myth. Nigeria is, you know, in reality, it's about number 2 or 3 on the continent of Africa. Because our per capita GDP is too low. You know, South Africa is about $5,000. Ours is about $1,200. All right. So these are the issues. You know, and then the country also went further to say that they want to do brass LNG as well as OKL LNG. To me, if the first LNG was an economic miscalculation, then the subsequent LNG would be economic sabotage. And nobody should do LNG for exports again until we satisfy energy use or gas use in the domestic market. Until that happens, no export should take place.
So do you anticipate that Nigeria will be able to generate about the same quantum of revenue and GDP contribution with the suggestion you're making?
Oh, certainly. You know, I mean, the energy is here. I mean, in terms of the human energy, right? It is here. The entrepreneurial energy is here. You know, what we lack is the ability to mobilize capital and then get into productive activities. You know, our rate of capital mobilization is about 15%. Okay. You know, a lot of people want to go into businesses, but because of the power, lack of power, they shelve it and maybe shelve it for an entire lifetime. You know, and so these are the things that are, you know, happening to us. So when you look at it cumulatively, right, the effect on the economy, you know, or the thing that it extracts from the economy is in excess of, you know, trillions of dollars over, you know, the last 40 years.
Just one quick one from me before my colleague Bukola comes in. Something you said the other time about also responding to questions from my colleagues only raised this question about what Mr. Idele told us the last time he was here, which you referenced earlier. And that's the fact that there are some agencies of government in Nigeria that have to collect their remittances into the federal coffers in dollars right here in Nigeria. I found that a little worrisome. Do you think it is worrisome that Nigerian companies in Nigeria have to pay taxes in dollars.
Yeah, that is worrisome. Again, it's a question of the law. What is the legal tender in this country? Legal tender in this country is Naira. And so anytime we digress from that perspective and begin to engage in activities that are inimical to, the set a legal framework, then of course we are doing something that is detrimental to us in the long term, right? And so when Mr. Ayodele, Taiwo Ayodele, chairman of the Presidential Committee on tax reform and all that, said that we are looking into that, but I think it's a welcome idea that, no company in Nigeria should be made to pay dollars. Even foreign companies that are coming here, right? If they want to settle something, let them pay Naira, all right? And because they are going to convert their dollars through the banking system. And so that dollar will stay within the banking system for the importation of capital goods and raw materials and all that. So it's a welcome idea.
Well, back to the forex challenges that you began talking about earlier, Mr. Williams. I wonder if you're following the conversation on the DSS investigation into forex fraud allegations leveled against the Asian oil giant Olam. The implications of that amid our conversation, and more importantly, how do you eliminate that interface between the Apex Bank and big-time manufacturers as this who require forex to import raw materials?
I can barely hear you, but what I understand from you is that you're talking about the forex deals that people were making.
The fraud allegations, forex fraud allegations leveled against the Indian oil giant, Singaporean rather, Olam, and the implications for the interface between the Apex Bank, CBN, and other big-time manufacturers who inevitably require forex to import their raw materials.
Exactly. This is a result of operating this dual currency market. When you create those such markets, you create an arbitrage opportunity. People would always take advantage of the difference in or the disparity in the two markets. So it's important that if you were to merge those two markets, right, these frauds are eliminated. You cannot buy today at 9:30 and then sell tomorrow at 9:20. You are going to lose money. So these are the things that they have to curtail. And then two, the CBN is not an authorized dealer in forex. That they should understand that. CBN is not an authorized dealer. They are the custodians of our dollars, and they sell the dollars to banks. The only authorized dealers in this country are the banks, the licensed banks. So there's no way, or there's no reason why CBN will get into the middle of foreign exchange allocation directly to individual companies or to persons. It is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. And these are the things that the current investigator should be able to look at in order for them to, try and curb it and then even rewrite the policies of the central bank. Because there are so many things they do that are not fit for a central bank. A central bank cannot issue credit cards. They issued what they call AfriGo. It's a credit card. They could not have issued that under any circumstance. The central bank cannot go and begin to do what you call that digital currency, because it's not called for. So they should stay away from the arena of banking and conduct pure supervisory and regulatory functions. They should not also go into lending. They should not do that. And they should not be intervening in any of the markets. For example, they were running what they call an RT200 program, which meant that, in order to incentivize exporters to repatriate their dollars, they would not give them extra money. don't do that. That's micromanaging, the entire process. You cannot do that.
And Mr. Williams, we can even expand it further to look at the debate over the propriety of the CBN also handling continuously the anchor borrowers program and the NERSL program. But let's manage our time to look at the work of the Tax Reform Committee set against the backdrop of the mandate of the president that we must achieve 18% tax to GDP ratio, that we must tax the fruit rather than the seed. Does this mean, and if we also consider what the chairman of the Tax Reform Committee has said, does this mean that the workers' income, are going to, the payee on workers' income will be increased? Do workers have anything to worry about in that regard?
Well, that committee, I think, is fully equipped, particularly with Mr. Taiwo being at the head to handle, this matter. I have a great confidence in that, young man to be able to, drive, that entire process. He started out, right, by looking at the low-hanging fruits, things that he could accomplish in 30 days. And some of those things that he could accomplish in 30 days, from our perspective, is that, they could match the two markets. Number two, stop banks from paying settling remittances, inward remittances, with dollars. That they can do, within 30 days. So the thing about the worker salaries and all that, I know that that committee, I'm sure, will be able to, deal with those issues.
Well, interestingly, yeah, my apologies, Mr. Williams, because we're completely out of time. Interestingly, one of the things Mr. Oyedele also mentioned is that their report is ready for the first 30 days, and they're only waiting for the president to give his perspectives, make it known, and then action can be taken. I'm certain we're going to have to call you again to have this conversation and take this further. But we have to thank you so much for your time this morning. Derego Williams is an economist and global strategist. Thank you so much for your time and thoughts today.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, we're back in a moment. Do stay with us.
All right, welcome back to Sunrise. Today we've got Mr. Balangilari joining us here. Former governor of Adamawa State. He's also a member of the APC Professionals Forum. Good morning, and thank you for coming on the program today, sir.
Thank you, Chamberlain.
It's been a while since many heard you make some key statements out there in the polity, but you have been playing some roles behind the scenes for your party. But at the moment, lots of reactions came through about the recent court judgments, because you yourself played a key role in promoting the Muslim ticket of your party. Your party has just come off this court judgment. So what is your impression of how all of this has turned out so far?
Thank you for asking these questions, and good morning, viewers. In summary, I would say, having listened throughout the judgment for close to 12 hours, my little knowledge and expertise in law, honestly, I would say the judges did justice to the case, to the issues canvassed by both parties, the petitioners and the respondents, and I give them a pat on the back. That is the way it should be. It's not good enough for people to completely try to put down our judges who cannot speak for themselves. In any contentious issue that goes before a court, there has to be a winner and a loser. But I also, having said that, I also concur with the petitioners that want to go further up to the Supreme Court. Because I believe that at the end of this whole exercise, our electoral jurisprudence will be so enriched, and there will be a lot of work for the National Assembly to do in terms of looking at the results of the decision of the Supreme Court, which is the final in this matter. And where we can do some picking, effect constitutional amendments where necessary, we'll do so. For instance, look at the issue of FCT, 25% or not. I mean, these are matters that could be completely cured by constitutional amendment. So let's see how it goes, but for now I would say it was a wonderful decision.
Are you happy with the way things are turning out in the country so far? Because some of the policies the government has taken, lots of people are feeling the effects, economic effects of the policies, and now they're just wondering, oh dear, see where we are now. Who would have thought?
Well, you know, being the human beings we are, particularly in the setting of Nigeria, who didn't really suffer, I mean, who didn't work hard, suffer pain like other countries did to get their independence. So always there's this feeling that, you know, things must go smoothly, as it has always been. But you know, President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is coming from the back of many decades of maladministration, if I will use that term, 20, 30 years. You don't expect a man come on board and within just, I mean, is that something you say, by magic wand you wave and everything will fall into sync? Doesn't work like that. But you can see the man, you can see that the man means well. He's taking decisions, painful decisions, that we will either face them now or we'll face them and they will be much more worse for us in the future. And so I would plead with Nigerians. All of us are paying the price, but that is a pain that will lead to gain eventually for all of us, you know. And you can begin to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Look at the trip to India, what we have gotten in terms of promises of investments, in terms of dollars that will come into this country. Who would have considered that would happen a few years ago? Look at even the stopover in Dubai. This issue of our relationship with UAE has been hanging for long. And suddenly, the statesman, the politician that Ahmed Bola Tinubu, our president, he stopped over and was able to broker peace and understanding. We must salute this man. And like our religious injunction, we say it is our duty to pray for our leaders.
If I could just talk a little bit about the leadership process, because, I mean, the courts either validate or invalidate, however all of that play out after INEC may have done whatever it is that they've done, because right now that seems to be a dominant narrative across board, that if we could get it right with the way we elect us, that leaders come through the political parties, and then INEC ensures that they do what they have to do right, and the courts don't, quote unquote, interfere or force certain people on us, as some people think, then, you know, the society might just be on a very good pedestal and trajectory to developing and then taking our pride of place in the Committee of Nations a lot firmer than we are today, as many think. But in terms of how leaders emerge from political parties, your party, for instance, would you say that you are satisfied with that process, or we need to do way better? Because, I mean, there were some pieces that were ascribed to you where you were talking about how certain persons wanted you to pay some money if you had to contest or make yourself available for those positions.
Well, let me restrict myself to the latter part of the comment as regards what happened to me or what I went through. I think there's always room to improve on our system, internal democracy. There must always be space for the best to emerge. I'm taking a cue from my own experience. I went into this election with the best of intentions to contribute my quota to the development of our country. And if you recall, towards the end of, I think, yeah, the last assembly proposed, I think, I forwarded a bill to Mr. President stating the amount of money that all categories of competitors who will go into elections and spend. I think, if I recall very well, senators were tagged to spending about $1 billion or thereabouts. I can't remember completely now. House of Rep members, there was a tab on what they could spend. And with that mindset, I went, of course, this is not the first time. I was a member of the House of Representatives in the Fifth Assembly. So, and by divine providence, I became deputy governor, and I thought I could still offer something to my community. I said, well, of course, this is usual. You go around the state, you tour your constituency. Where I come from is northern part of Adamawa Central District. You market yourself, by yourself or through your coordinators and agents, speak to them. And of course, the proposal that I said I would give them some takeoff of 100,000 naira was done in good faith, because you do not expect a man, where I come from, there is a border between us and Cameroon. You don't expect some of them to come to our senatorial headquarters, pay for themselves, come and lodge themselves, and give you votes. Who are you? Oh, I did that in good faith. But as it turned out, it was misinterpreted. But I opted out. I wish there is a way that this thing can be more fine-tuned.
So you couldn't contest for the position you want because you couldn't afford to offer the kind of money they were asking.
They were asking. It was not the party, but surprisingly...
But they are members of the party.
No.
Those people are members of the party, aren't they?
No, I mean, yes, they are members of the party, delegates, but, but the point I'm saying is that it's not the leadership of the party that would determine who would emerge. You go and canvass, you campaign among the delegates. I think there could be a way that this thing can be fine-tuned. And that is why I say there's always room for improvement. That is why between this election and the next one, with the caliber of...
But what that means is that if young people want to come in to contest elections, and they don't have the kind of billions that politicians spend, it means what? Their chances will be very limited? Some of them may not even smell it.
Unfortunately, with all due respect, as it is now, I don't know how you will eliminate the money factor. But people are increasingly becoming, bold, and they now begin to see, even the children or the ordinary man begin to see this kind of routine would get us nowhere. Because those we elect simply disappear. We don't see them until another cycle of election comes. So I see that the next cycle of elections will be much more different, because, it's no longer enough to come and say, all right, we give you palliative, we buy you this and buy you that. After being elected, you disappear. And people are now beginning to say, well, our children too must have a better future.
Mr. Hilary, you said something earlier about when Chairman asked you about the government policies and how they're impacting on the people. You said we're all suffering the impact of these government policies. And now you're talking about money politics. There are those who argue, or the argument out there is that, yes, the policies are there, but we're not seeing the politicians who are in government now actually suffering the impact of these policies as we see. Tied to this matter of moving money from politics, how do you think it can work? How do we end corruption? Because all of this is what people will term as corruption. How do we end corruption in our police?
Yeah, before taking on the main thrust of your question, I think I need to clarify the point. I didn't say government policies in the sense of deliberate government policies to inflict pain. Now look, even the contestants, the candidates who went into these elections, all agreed we will remove fuel subsidy, for example. So it is not something that was limited to APC or our candidate. They all agreed, you know. And what magic one has anybody that will overnight translate and give and strengthen the value of our currency, other than through productivity, increased productivity in the economy? This is what Mr. President has done. We must go back to the beginnings and see how we can invest resources into agriculture. And now here, I would say, in addition to investing resources into agriculture, I think states at all levels, devoid of party differences, we must be able as a country to identify areas of comparative advantages. For instance, I can talk about Borno, say for example. In Borno, all the beans you need in this country can be produced. All the wheat you want can be produced from Borno Yobe excess. Adamawa, all the rice that will feed this country can be produced from Adamawa. For I can tell you that every month during harvesting season, about 300 trailer loads of rice move out of Adamawa, all parts of the country, milling mills everywhere. Little livestock. I tell you, from Mobi alone, the Central headquarters from where I come, every week, nothing less than 130 trailer loads of livestock move out of Mobi every week. You know, so these things, states should be able to develop and concentrate on areas of comparative advantage.
Okay. Maybe I didn't put that question.
Okay, right.
Yeah, policy, everybody agreed that fuel subsidy should be.
Yeah.
But the question was, how do we take out corruption? If everyone goes in there, and I mean, you see every politician who's gone into office living in opulence,
yeah.
And the people who elected them are wondering, how do we feed? Now they are handing out palliatives, right? Distributing. Different state governments are distributing food palliatives. But those in leadership are living in opulence. For instance, a House of Reps member was reported in the media as handing out shoe-shining kits to youth in the community. That what they need, how is he himself living to show them that he's also suffering the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy?
Yeah. Okay. My take on that will be this. We must reorient and go back to the basic things that sustain us as a country, morality and values. And here, really, the solution will be the GOD factor, what I call the God factor. You must bear in mind that any position of leadership you get in politics is one that, I mean, at least I know that two of the main religions, Christianity and Islam, it's a test from God. And you know whether you agree or not. For me, I censure myself and say, look, this trust that God has given me, I will be accountable in the hereafter. This is why a person like me lives with eternity in view every day of my life. And that is why all the mandates I received right from the days I went to the Constitutional Conference, went to the House of Representatives, Deputy Governor, and Governor, I tried to live by that ethos. Namely, I didn't need any third party to check what I do. I censor myself, but I believe that God Almighty who created us is all-knowing. And it will be better for me in the hereafter if I live by that dictate. If most Nigerians and our religions, that is what our religions require of us, then people will begin to fall in line and do the needful.
Is it true that you will not be popular in the party or in governance if you don't, quote unquote, just share money to the people?
Just sincerely, I saw this live because, like I told you a while ago, They told the reports I got, said, well, you are the best if in terms of knowledge, experience, but hey, I mean, we're sorry. We will not take your money because we expect more. That is the mindset, you know. And I'll tell you what, I also tried to contest as a governorship candidate after I left office on the platform of the PDP. Because I didn't have money to do what was expected, I couldn't go anywhere. It has nothing to do with character, it has nothing to do with integrity. So the issue of money will continue to be a recurrent decimal in our money politics until we all agree to do the needful, to be guided, and know that at the end of your journey here on earth, someday you go 6 feet down and you'll be answerable when you cross there, or you are this here on earth. That for me is what I fear most in my life. How will I meet my Creator? Will He say, welcome home, that you've done well? For me, that's my solution to the problem of money politics.
Is it that the people, the politicians as they are, or the people who are in leadership positions, are not thinking these values? They are not thinking that they have to account to someone at the end of... I'm saying that almost all of them, the two major religions you talked about, they are all part of either they are Muslims or they are Christians.
Yes, yes.
Is this thinking not there for them when they go? Is it that when you get into office, there's something that blocks your thinking in that direction?
I don't know. I can only talk from my personal experience, unfortunately. I tell you what, when we were campaigning in those days, my boss, Admiral Nyako, and myself would go around the state right at midnight. And people will wait patiently for you by the roadside, right till wee hours of the day. And then when I got into office, the security around me, this time, when we want to go past the crowd, they'll be blaring. And I tell you, go to hell, what are you blaring and scaring people off? Don't forget that not too long ago we were here, these people were lined up, waiting for us, way into the midnight. You want to now tell me because we're in office, we should just simply treat them as if they are no longer human beings? So that was how I dealt with the issue personally. I told my staff, my security, no siren anywhere I go. No siren, and I don't want a convoy. I never had a convoy of probably more than 4 vehicles. What are you showing off? If the American president, people who hold the shot in the world, are mindful of these things, who are we? You know, try to live by example. And this is why to date one can drive around, you have nothing to think about, that you have hurt somebody's feelings because of your style, you know.
There's this impression that people have about political office holders, politicians largely, that during the campaigns, they will come to your constituency. They will do all they can to get your vote. But at the end of the day, when they get into office, they shut them off. They don't even pick up any messages or responses, pick up your calls, or in fact, you don't even get the news of what the real situation is in town because you're surrounded by people who won't give you the real scenario. Did you experience that kind of narrative? Is it true at all in any way?
Now, in my case, I deliberately did this. Now, for instance, my handset, I kept it to myself. I receive calls from anywhere, but I will not answer them instanter. I normally wait till later when I retire home. I go through them one by one, whether your name is in my contact list or not. I try to reach you. You can ask, believe me, what I say here, you can verify from Adamawa State. I receive calls up to this moment from people that I don't know. I answer them. Even when I was in office, surprisingly, there are people who will phone and insult you. And typically, in Hausa they will say, I'll say, Allah Hakui, just please bear with me. Because they will ask you for things you cannot deliver. You don't, I mean, it's either demand for money or something or that you don't really have, but a large majority of them realize that it is always good when you have a channel of communication with them, when they phone, you try to answer. Those that you cannot answer personally, you delegate your PA, answer them. And that is how I personally conducted myself. I cannot speak for others, but it is really unfortunate. I can tell you, since I left office, I have not tried to phone my colleagues in government because I know there is only one that I will not mention his name here that has picked my call. I didn't phone because I wanted anything, but just to say, how are you doing? And I guess maybe because they are busy or some other thing. Or sometimes they change their phones every now and then. I understand the enormity of the work on them. People must also give them that benefit of that. But governors require that you create, when you're in this office, don't cut off from those who brought you there. There are times, personally, I will ride my vehicle at night with one or two of my aides. We go into the nooks and crannies and surprise people. They wonder, it's not Ngilari. And, because you need to get a feedback on how people really are thinking about you and your government.
Different governors, even former governors too, have had their battles with their civil service.
Yeah.
So that they can ensure that, because that will be the engine of governance. Mm. Did you experience it? How would you, in fact, many of them always talk about their experience, how there's corruption, how they need to ensure that that is history. How would you suggest we address corruption in civil service?
Honestly, if I can tell you, there is a caste method to deal with corruption. I wouldn't be able to answer it, but here are some of the things I would suggest. Perhaps if you create the institution of ombudsman in offices, in your office, where people can reach you right or through phoning, we try to do that. Create one Saturday in the month where people from everywhere in the state can phone in and complain to you. You'll be able to pick the trends of what is happening within the civil service. Because you there wouldn't know what is happening down there. So you must find a way to reach out to hear what people are thinking. And you should also be able to take into confidence your security men that are working with you, like the SSS. Because every morning the SSS will place at your table various issues generated in the polity the previous day, and ask them, please give me an honest assessment. I've noticed that there are leaders who wouldn't want you to tell them the bad side of what is happening. And I think that's not a good thing. Anybody who truly loves his leader to be able to tell him as it is. You should have friends that you grew up with who should be able to walk right into your bedroom and knock and tell you, look, this is what is happening out there. Are you aware? They are your best friends. And where you have an explanation to offer, you offer. But a situation where you are so cocooned, you cannot relate to the people. This is what translates when elections come, when you want a second term. You always find it difficult. You go by rigging, by corrupting the system. Because you are cut off yourself from the system.
All right, let's bring in our colleagues in Lagos.
All right, thank you, Chamberlain. Good morning, Mr. Ngilari from Lagos. Well, I'd like to delve into a bit of politics. And pardon me, this seems like putting you a bit on the spot, but I'm also referring to that interview that you granted recently. You can confirm it or refute it. You were quoted as saying, when asked if you had 1 billion naira, you said, if I see 1 billion naira now, I'll faint. but you also say that, in fact, the good thing is that the greatest difficulty for a person who tries to be honest and righteous is that you gather so many enemies. Till tomorrow, I say it boldly, without fear or favor. If you take the proceedings of the courts that arraigned me on a 5-count charge, there is not one of the 5 count that said I took 1 naira or diverted 1 naira. So it would seem like you were affirming your innocence following that conviction while you were governor. What are the lessons, that you'd like to share from that experience? And also, what's your relationship like with your colleagues at the time? The current governor of Adamawa State, former Governor Jibrila Bindo, and former Governor Murita Lanyako. What's your relationship with them like now after all these years?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for asking this question. Let me start first with the issue of the fainting saga that I said, if I saw $1 billion naira. I think people took it too literal. But by this I mean, you see, I was interviewed in a studio like this, live. It was the ambience of the room itself, makes you to crack a joke, and I didn't mean to say, certainly even if you brought $1 billion, how can I, with the state of health that I have, very good, thanks to God, I say I will collapse because I have seen $1 billion. Yeah, I mean, it was a joke. But put that aside, I truly mean that, and this can be verified, my accounts can be checked 20 years back. There was no time I ever had a credit balance of $1 billion naira in my account. I never had. That is not to say that I didn't have opportunities that I would have made that kind of money when I was governor. That's not the path just for myself. And mind you, I'm a legal practitioner. I've been practicing law for a considerable time. I was called to the bar in 1978. I practiced. I made the likes of Chirotimi Williams, made the likes of Chike Ofodile, and I still are in touch with doings of the profession. One takeoff that I can always say I got from these people is that in the legal profession, build character and integrity. And that was what helped me. 10 years post-call, I was asked to go to the bench in both Maiduguri and Adamawa, my state. I just thanked them. I said, no, I'm not cut for that. And eventually I veered off into politics. And my wife of blessed memory, because of the way we developed ourselves, even became the Attorney General of Borno State, if I may tell you. With the very first lady, I believe, in the whole of northern Nigeria to become an Attorney General. We really were guided spiritually by what the Holy Books told us, and these are the values we imparted on our children. Of course, also, the fact that I say I've never had a balance of $1 billion, one thing I learned from the likes of Chico Ofodile is that in practice, when you get 10 naira or 9 naira, share it into 3, invest 3 naira, spend 3 naira on your family, and if you are in politics, spend 3 naira. I had, over the years, a little bit to fall back on, and I hope, so I'm not complaining. I thank God for where I have come from and where I am now, and I'm not too comfortable. I never prayed to be a millionaire, but I'm comfortable.
Well, Mr. Aguilari,
now to my successor.
Okay.
My Bindo, my junior brother Bindo. It was under his government, unfortunately, that all these things happen. I've forgiven those who had hand in it, in my conviction. Unfortunately, some of them have gone, younger than me, have gone to the other side before me. And there are so many things I cannot say here because I am trying to build up my autobiographies for the benefit of younger generation. It was an unfortunate incident because the case itself was predicated on so-called breach of procurement law of Adamawa State. I maintain, I have the judgment right before me here, the Court of Appeal judgment. At the end of that proceeding, the judge said, this appeal, unmistakable that the appeal is a massive success. It's here. Right here.
Just a quick one, Mr. Aguilari, if you don't mind reporting in. My apologies if you can hear me, because we are running completely out of time. And there is a question my colleague asked you, Nyota, the other time about corruption. And you have stated your own cleanness and everything like that. If you can do this in about 60 to 90 seconds, it will be great. Talking about corruption, many people believe that some governors sometimes divert public funds for private use, for public, into their pockets and all of that. Do you think these things really do happen? Is it true? If it is, what is it that makes it happen? Is it because our systems, our processes are porous and consequently give the governors power to put their hands in the till?
Well, let me say this. When you are a governor, you are some kind of demigod, don't forget. All the local governments are under you. Everybody is at your beck and call. Is it the accountant general or the commissioner of finance or anybody that you will say, I want this done, that he will not do? If you want memos generated for anything, they will do it because they want to be where they are. And so it will not be difficult. But you see, that is why the way to deal with, one of the ways to deal with corruption is to investigate and deal with it. There are people, I have it recorded. I don't want to mention names again, but there are people who have very serious, grievous allegations of corruption, who are either former governors or whatever, and other people, public officers, who are walking the streets. So when everybody can do that, what do you expect others who come after them? It's only the person who fears God, who knows that at the end of this journey in this life, you will transit to the other side. That is why for me, virtually every day, I drive myself and pass the Gudu Cemetery, where I see people who, if power and money can give them whatever they need in this world, they would have been alive. But they are down there 6 feet. I hope I've answered your question.
Okay, all right. I think we can wrap up at this point in time. We do thank you for coming on, Bala Aguilari, former governor of Adamawa State. Thank you for coming on. And are you planning to perhaps try to see if you can contest again sometime in the future?
Thank you, Chairman, for this question. As I am, honestly, I have no desire to go into competitive politics contesting again.
All right.
Others should grow.
Okay.
You must grow and let others grow.
All right. Thank you for coming on, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Well, that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you again tomorrow. I am Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Goodbye. I'm Nyota Igbe.
Thank you for watching. I am Bukola Koka.
We got all your messages. Sincere apologies we couldn't take them. Hope you enjoyed the program, though. Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.